Well, many applauded Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker's law prohibiting collective bargaining for some public employees. The state of Michigan may do the exact opposite. On Election Day, residents will vote on a ballot initiative in Michigan to make collective bargaining a permanent part of the state constitution and reverse union reforms that were put in place over the last 2 years. Joining me now is the Director of Labor Policy at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, Vinnie Vernuccio, and Assistant Professor of Political Science at Michigan State University and author of the Not-So-Special Interest, Professor Matt Grossman. And Professor Grossman, let me start with you because I was reading about some of the studies that you've been doing, whether or not this Michigan issue, which has now been in Wisconsin, it's been in Ohio, now it comes to Michigan, will it decide where the unions are going to go? Are they going to go to future states? Will it make any difference on the national scene?
Well, each state has different institutions that the unions are using. I think it was a lot easier to win a no vote on a referendum in Ohio than to win a recall election in Wisconsin, for example. And the unions are actually pursuing three initiatives. The Proposition 2 is the most important, but in my estimation, probably the least likely to pass. I think they're most likely to pass the home health aid unionization proposition, and then probably the opposition to the emergency manager statute. So each election kind of follows its own dynamics, and it's a lot easier to win a no vote than a yes vote.
All right. Yeah, in fact, Professor, I did see one of the interviews you had on your Michigan State site was about the fact that if people are they're not really well informed, or maybe they're not passionate about something, no is usually the default.
Well, and also people over the course of a campaign tend to learn things they don't like about an initiative rather than like an initiative. So my polling has it at 48% to 26% support right now. But even though that sounds like maybe it's likely to pass, historically that's actually not a good indication that it's likely to pass. If it's under 50%, generally people who are undecided will learn things they don't like about the initiative if both sides are spending money.
Interesting. All right, Vincent, what's your take? First of all, for the people that don't live in Michigan, we've seen, again, the unions fighting for their lives in Wisconsin and Ohio with different results. Do you agree with the professor about the fact that, first of all, could you explain what the initiative is, and do you think it's going to pass or not?
Okay, well, actually, I do agree with the professor. I do not think it's going to pass, and I also agree with him that the more people learn about this thing, the less they like it. This would give government unions an effective veto over past, present, and future legislation by making every government union contract have the power of the Constitution and allow it to supersede laws. And honestly, I think this is the Gettysburg for a lot of the government sector unions across the country. They are putting millions and millions of dollars in this because they know that on one side, the taxpayers and the job creators won in Wisconsin, and on the other side, the special interest won in Ohio. And the nation's on a teeter right now, and whatever happens with Prop 2 will give momentum to one side or the other. So the stakes are extremely high nationally, not just in Michigan for Proposal 2.
Well, that's what I was suspecting. This is kind of the tiebreaker to see whether they move on to other states with the same idea on this or not. But when you take a look at the state of Michigan, back to you, Professor, you've gone from a Democrat governor to a Republican governor. Do these things give you any sort of indicator as to what the mood of the people are in the state of Michigan?
Well, Michigan obviously historically is a high unionization state, but unionization is on the decline, especially in the private sector nationwide and really worldwide. You know, I think that's an important trend, but it doesn't necessarily cross over into traditional Republican versus Democratic politics. And I find that unions are still extremely important players in Democratic Party politics, and even as unionization rates have declined, that doesn't mean that they win fewer of their battles in the legislature or on the campaign trail. And
Vincent, I mean, is this one of those types of ballot measures that they really are concerned about, or was this a way to get the union voter to show up at the polls in hopes that you will get more Democrats, in hopes that will help President Obama in his efforts in that state?
It's a little from column A, a little from column B, but for the most part, I think this is all the marbles for the unions because they know, they've seen what's happening in Wisconsin, and they're worried that the taxpayers saving, the tax-saving reforms are coming to Michigan, and we've already seen some very sensible reforms over the last 2 years, and they're getting worried. And that's why they're trying to pass this constitutional amendment to supersede laws, to overrule what the people's elected representatives are doing, and entrench their special interests.
Professor, the president hasn't been there. Or the last time I saw, he was recently, but then you had to go back over a year. And the president's been in so many neighboring states, battleground states. Are they taking Michigan for granted?
Well, I think they presume that if they were to lose Michigan, that would mean they would also have lost Ohio and several other states that they need to win the presidential election. So I don't know that they're taking it for granted, but they certainly think it's on the Democratic side of the swing states. I do disagree slightly with where they're putting their money. I think actually this does trade off a little bit with potentially putting money into Democratic state legislative races or to voter turnout operations. So to the extent that there's a political loser here, it actually might be the other Democratic candidates that this money would have otherwise gone to support.
All right. So let me get you to call the state. We have both of you agreeing on Proposition 2 on this constitutional union collective bargaining law. But what about who's going to win the state of Michigan? Professor, you go first.
I think Obama is more likely to win Michigan than Romney, quite a bit more likely, but obviously anything can happen in the next couple weeks. I also think the unions may end up winning their Proposition 4, and they may get a windfall from those union donations. So it may end up not being a total loss for them, even if they lose on Proposition 2. They may also win the emergency manager initiative. At least that's a possibility. So they have some other routes to come out ahead here.
And Vincent, what do you think is going to happen as far as the presidential when it comes to Michigan?
Well, when it comes to Michigan, I think you have to look regionally, and it might be Obama by a squeaker in Michigan, but the Democrats are going to have to spend a lot more resources in Michigan to hold that state. So you're going to see those resources diverted from states like Ohio and Wisconsin, and those states might actually be what puts Romney over the top. As far as the other ballot measures, the proposal 4 is up in the air right now. And that could keep a lot of money in union coffers. What that proposal is all about, real quick, is unions taking money from people taking care of sick family members, skimming money off their Medicaid money, their Medicaid checks, and the unions have already skimmed. The SEIU in particular has taken $32 million to spend on their own political gain in that, and it's $6 million a year. So if they get that, that could add to their coffers, yeah.
Well, we'll watch and see, because Michigan's also the home state of Mitt Romney, so it'll be a son of Detroit. So it's an interesting state to watch. Vincent Vernuccio, thank you. Dr. Matt Grossman, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Tom, thanks for having us.
Up next, some big companies are saying market uncertainty is what's keeping them from hiring. Is that preventing the economic recovery, or is there more to the story? And is there an algorithm for love